we start to get a bit of a dip into the afternoon. So I'll try and keep us all awake, include myself. So I am Anthony Morris. I'm the Public Sector Cyber Resilience Coordinator in the Cyber Resilience Unit. And for my sins, I'm in charge of this tool that I'm going to talk you through, the Cybersecurity Procurement Support Tool. So let's see, get it to move on to the next screen. There we go. So I'm going to do a quick background on this, really, a bit of a why supply chain is important, cybersecurity, and the policy behind that. And then I'm going to do a walkthrough. I'm not going to do the actual tool because I just worry about our internet connection working. But what I'm going to do is I've got screenshots throughout the presentation that will show you where I think it's important to highlight different things. And then there'll be Q&A at the end. So hopefully plenty of time to have a chat, because I find that's probably the most helpful part of all this than anything else. So the background to this. Cyber attacks are increasing. The pandemic has increased that even more. Certainly, we've seen COVID-related text, HMRC before that. All these things were really kind of like increasing, and people were seeing them more in their own lives. We'd all seen the kind of African prince years ago asking you to keep his money safe, and we've moved forward so much in that, in terms of what the cyber criminals are up to, and making it much more realistic and not obvious whether it's real or not. In the last week, I think with the Russian-Ukraine situation, it's made it even more at the forefront of our minds, with Anonymous announcing earlier this week or in the weekend that they've declared war on Russia, a cyber war. Russia's been doing that for years. A lot of countries do that anyway. It's all happening underground in a lot of ways. We don't see that at the forefront. So it's there. And the impact of these can be catastrophic. Loss of service, huge costs, reputational damage. And I'm going to just talk about a few different examples to kind of connect to that. So SEPA was on Christmas Eve in 2020. They were attacked, the Scottish Environmental Protection Agency. Our team was coordinating out of Police Scotland, and they luckily got some laptops from Scottish Government, which just happened to be spare at that point in time, and we just donated them to allow them to keep running. That was a fortunate situation that they were able to do that. But over a year later, they're still kind of recovering from that. So and there's a £6 million figure somewhere I've seen. I don't know where that came from, but there's a cost that someone's attached to it, because you've got to think about that you can't run things. You've got to spend money on people coming in to fix the problems, to forensically look at everything that you've got and work out what the issues were and make sure it didn't happen again. And the reputational aspect of that. There's been other issues as well. There's other cyber attacks. So US Pipeline and Blackboard, they were the ones that have happened in the last 18 months, with Microsoft having an attack as well. And I think particularly those last two show the supply chain element of this. When one company is attacked, the ones that are attached to them in some way or other, or providing custom to them, Microsoft being most people are customers of them because most have got Windows, then it impacts all of us. So it's not just going to be that one organization. We're all connected together in this big, wonderful World Wide Web family. And the last thing to mention here is ransomware. If you don't know what a ransomware attack is, this is where data is stolen, it's encrypted, and then there's a demand for money back, demand for money, so ransom. And then that money is then, well, the data is then decrypted, decryption key is given, and then it is given back. That doesn't normally happen. Most of the time, they don't give them data back, and we don't encourage that to happen anyway. We don't. If you do give them a ransom, that's just feeding the beast of the criminal enterprise, and they keep doing that. We don't want that to keep happening. So, but it's been really damaging. It's what hit SEPA, and it also hit a charity, a care association in April 21. They were also hit with the same thing, and their data was put on the dark web. Dark web, if you don't know what that is basically eBay for cyber criminals. You can get tools to hack. You can go and buy drugs. You can buy all sorts of things to frame someone you works for. Claim that they've raped somebody. You can just plant information. It's an awful place. So that's where a lot of data ends up, and it ends up being thrown around. People buy it off each other because it's really, really valuable. I'll stop trying to scare you. So supply chain cybersecurity. What cyber criminals are always trying to do is find the quickest and easiest route to make money. I think cyber criminals, it's moved to that because it's much easier. Like the rest of it, it's more convenient. You can do it from home. Um, and the public sector are investing a lot more in their cybersecurity. Certainly in the last 5-10 years, they're far more robust in what they're doing. They invest a lot in it. It doesn't mean they don't get in, the cyber criminals, because we've seen out of SEPA, WannaCry in 2017 hit the NHS. There's been Glasgow University and UHI all got hit, and it happens all the time. Not all of it reported because there's thresholds. But criminals look to supply chain as a route in because they see that they're not as strong in terms of their security that's in place. And if they can get in there and they happen to have a route in to the public sector, that's a good way. And I like to compare it to break into a bank. You kind of imagine the 1970s films where they break into a bank, it's guns blazing, you charge in there, you say, give me all your money, they hand the money over, you run out there with your big swag of money. Nowadays, banks have got cameras, they've got silent alarms, you've got perplex glass between the customer and the staff, and you probably can't get all the money through one member of staff anyway. There'll be kind of protocols in place that allow it to be locked down. So what does a criminal do? Well, they find a building 3 doors down. It's got a smashed window. It's empty. Go in there, dig a tunnel underneath that, and across the bank in the middle of the night, you go in and you take the money. It's not really like that, but that's kind of what cyber criminals are doing. They're trying to find somebody who's got a tunnel in, and then if they're attached, they can go in and have a poke around and get in without anyone even noticing. So that's the supply chain risk that we've got. And the Scottish Government recognised that risk and developed a guidance note for the public sector. And it followed the National Cybersecurity Centre's 4 principles. National Cybersecurity Centre is a UK technical authority and part of the UK government. And one of the key principles of that was to set and communicate minimum security requirements for suppliers and embed that into procurement processes, an appropriate proportionate approach to cyber assurance processes. But the feedback we got was that this doesn't really, there's no clear way of how to implement that. We don't know, it's all very good, we don't know what to do with it. So that's how the tool came about. We created this online tool to help implement that. And the aims of this were to create a consistent implementation of that guidance note and create a proportionate approach. And I'll go into that later on because it's no point in having different contracts with different levels of cybersecurity having the same requirements. You've got to be proportionate to that one and minimize burdens for everyone. An important point to make as well is this isn't mandatory for the public sector, but it will be for suppliers if they're required to do it. But we are encouraging it, and we are seeing, I've certainly seen since it's launched in January 20, a lot more users of this. So it's getting to be used more. It's been a slow burn, a bit of a sell from us or me, but it's becoming a recognized tool that's helping. So the benefits of this is it creates a consistent and a proportionate approach for all nationally. So all in Scotland will use it, and I think that's become something that's recognised by a lot of different people now in the public sector. They like that there's one consistent approach, and it helps for suppliers as well. Thinking about yourselves, because if you are going for a contract, you're bidding for one contract in one public sector organisation, and then you use their really complicated Excel spreadsheet, you may have to then go for another different public sector contract in a different organisation, and have to use a different spreadsheet. So what this does is allow you to do the same process and actually then reuse your answers from one contract to the other. So there are benefits like that. If you've got certification like Cyber Essentials, there's a reduction in number of questions you have to answer because the tool allocates or takes questions away because you've got that through Cyber Essentials. It's also a free cyber health check, and I'll show you how you can do that. No one sees what you populate other than yourself, and what it does is spits out a report at the end and tells you where you're doing well and areas you can improve. So I'm going to do a walkthrough now, and what I'm going to show you first off is something that I created myself because I was trying to work out how it all fits together. And this is a procurement stage kind of process here. So at the beginning of this, when the buyer is developing their strategy before they've even got into putting these onto anywhere, the contract, they would create a complete risk profile assessment on the tool, and that's their side of it for that particular contract. You get an initial risk profile, and then you can increase that if you feel like it's not high enough. That then creates a reference number and a report for them, and then they can add that to all of their documentation that will go on to PCS tender. And then you as a supplier would go in and register or log in if you've used it before, input that reference number, you complete a supplier assurance questionnaire, download that report, and you submit that with all of your other documents. You can also complete what is called a CIP or SIP. It's a Cyber Implementation Plan, which is basically if you haven't met the requirements of that contract at the point of bidding for it, but say right now you're bidding for it, August is the point of contract start, but there's actually a milestone that requires the security to be in place by November, then that could be November, could be a point where you need to have everything in place. So it gives you enough time to kind of get your ducks in order. And then once you've done all that, the buyer would then determine who wins that contract. And if you've done the CIP, then it wouldn't necessarily be a pass-fail for you. And they would complete all that in a tool, and then you find out the kind of the outcome of that. I'd mentioned proportionate. What the tool does, it has different risk profiles for the buyers when they're determining each contract. I like to use the analogy of toilet rolls. If you're buying toilet rolls for an organization, there's probably going to be very minimal, if any, interaction online. There's probably not any data processing or access to your systems. It's probably going to be a case of paying it and delivering them to people's buildings, their premises. And then you kind of got different levels, and they all associate to different cybersecurity standards. And it goes all the way up here to higher risk profile, which is the NIST, ISO 27001, the highest levels of cybersecurity we have. And I'm thinking of things like Social Security. If you were bidding for a contract for them and you were actually in their system, part of that, you're creating a new online payment platform for them, and there was access to a lot of their other platforms, and that sensitive data of all the people using it and a lot of access. That's where you've got to make sure you've got high level, and they'll be ISO 27001 themselves as well. So it's kind of reflective of that contract, of that particular contract that you're bidding for. So now I'm going to go into the actual tool. So here it looks a lot like any government website you may have gone into if you've gone to get your COVID vaccine, or you've gone to get your COVID test. This is a similar kind of thing to that. So there's nothing really surprising here. It's just your email, password, registering, and both different places there. I think to note that when you do register, though, that you will have need to have a functioning mobile phone that you can access, because there is two-factor authentication. So you'll get a text when you log in, and I'll just show you that now, actually, just so you can see. So whenever you log in, you'll need a PIN that you've created, a 4-digit PIN that you created at the point of registering. Then you'll get a text that will go in here each time, that text will go to that mobile number. We have had concerns. The reason why I do raise this, people have worried that they haven't got a work mobile and they don't want to use their own. The only time that mobile is ever used is at this point. The system and tool doesn't actually send you anything else. It's this is evolved from an MOD tool originally. So the people who developed this have got very high levels of security in place. It's kind of part of how they operate. So that phone number doesn't get seen by anyone else, including us, even though we own the tool. So you would get a PIN, and you'd also, if you end up putting in your kind of details more than once, you end up with more than one code. you'll see up at the top this letter here, so you just make sure you match that particular text to the most recent one and the one that you see on the screen. So that's how you get in, and this is your dashboard. So here you'll see kind of my name. You've got here risk profile assessment. If you drop that down, you get your supplier assurance questionnaire, and then you can click on the status, whether it's drafting, publishing, and what you do then is you'll see below, you can see here selecting, so you can see part of it, you'll see a list of all the ones you've completed already. If you're completing a new one, you click on that. To complete a risk profile as a buyer, you click on that one. And then you're going into the tool itself, and it tells you a lot of things as you go. There's a lot of holding, which I think is really helpful to kind of just show you how the tool works and what's happening here. And this is just really telling you a bit about what to do in the first time of using it. And here's a bit more about that, and it tells you what you need to have. People ask us how long it takes to complete this. You could complete it in 10 minutes if you know all the answers. But if you don't know all the answers, then you're going to need to spend more time, and you may have to go and source that information. So you can see here, you may need copies of your relevant certification. You'll need to upload that, your information security policy, certification policy. So there's lots of things that you'll need to have to hand as you fill it in. And you can save your answers and go back to it, so you need to go in and do it all at once. And this tells you about the cyber implementation plan. And this situation, the contracting authority has opted to accept one. So you'll see if it says it won't, then you won't. It'll be different here. And then here is the way you put in your reference number for that particular contract, which you can just put in this detail here. I said that you can do a test. That's where you click no and complete what the tool calls a sample SAQ. It's also a health check in my kind of view. You can see here you've got guidance as well. It'll tell you where you are across the whole tool as you're going through it, which is quite helpful. And this just tells you a bit more about the process, that you get down on the report at the end, and you need to meet the requirements and what the CIP implementation plan was set out the credible information on as well. So, and you can download that particular document here. And now we start to get into the actual tool. Here you can see, mentioned you can reuse answers from before. So if you do want to reuse your answers, you click on this here and you get a page that looks like this. So you can then edit any of the questions. You can scroll down all of your previous answers and just edit the ones that you know are different. Unfortunately, it does take you back in the tool and you have to scroll through it all, but it means that you don't have the answers are already pre-populated, so you don't have to go through them all and answer them. What you can see along here as well is all the types of questions that you can asked as well. So personal security, password policy, device management, cloud-based products, if it's relevant to that contract. So there's a lot of things being asked of you. And I'm not going to go through every single question that's in here because there's a lot, and it's really just give you an idea of how it works. So this is questions around your business as well. So there'll be kind of introductory questions around that. You can see this circle means that there's only one option that you can have. Here is about certification. So what you do here is if you've got Cyber Essential, Cyber Essential Plus, or the other ones are ISO Governance Gold or equivalent, or ISO 2001 equivalent. And you just add in, choose file, and add in your attachment of that certification. You can see here that you've got invite user to collaborate. So this means that you can bring somebody else into the tool if you don't know all the answers, which is it was a useful thing because I don't think people have all the answers. So this is just really a bit more about completing this and describing all digital networks and services that you have. And it's just, this is really the beginning of it all. You can see here tells you what page you are and the percentage. I say that because we didn't used to have this, and one of my big things that I did to improve it was to have that, because it's dynamic questions, so there's different questions for different contracts, and it was jumping around. You'd be at 23, that's only at 46 on the next page. So this is more reflective of your experience of this. and less daunting. And this then is one of the actual questions you might get asked in it, depending on that particular contract. Secure configuration is around firewalls and having software licenses from trusted sources. So you can see it's got circles, so it's one option for all of this. You've got guidance, you can click on that to find out more information about that particular thing. And there's an asterisk, which means this is a minimum answer for that particular question. And again, you've got guidance and collaboration here, and leave feedback if you think the tool needs work or you think it's great, whichever way you want to go with that. Here you've got another question here around cloud-based products. I put this in because you can see it's square. So this is, you can choose any of these except the last one, which is none of the above. If you do click all of them and none of the above, you'll be stuck here and have to go back and redo your questions. And that's the end of the questions. It's not as short as I showed you because there's a lot more, but I don't want to go through the whole lot. But the thing about this is you can see that you're not quite at the end. There's a lot of false endings. And I wanted to just kind of show you how you get to the very end of this. Here you've got what is called a pre-submission copy of your answers. It's a draft. So you click here to say you confirm that you're happy with your answers and to submit. But again, it's not quite the end. The tool then does an analysis of your answers and determines where you are in terms of the actual requirement of that contract. And in this situation, what I put in here, it was below minimum standard. And it tells me why. And it's this particular question here, SAQ 179. I didn't do what was required. But it does say that the supplier will allow me to provide a cyber implementation plan. Need a better title for that. And it tells you here what the date is of that particular plan. Here, because I put this in last year, it was the future. So it will be normally a future date. And then after that, you get to submit your final one. So this is the final report. And this is actually the final point of it as well. So you can see, click exit. You have now completed the supplier assurance questionnaire process, exit. You go to previous, but once you click exit, you've finished. And there is a lot. We have sometimes had it where people have thought they completed it, but nothing's been seen by the buyer. So I'm highlighting that as something just to make sure that you're aware of, because I don't want this tool to be a hindrance to the process of bidding for contracts. The cyber implementation plan, this is part of what it looks like. You've just got the details of that contract here, and then you put in details of how you're going to meet that particular requirement at the point of the date specified. It's a Word document, so you just fill that in separately and submit that with your report. Speaking of which, this is the report you get. So this is the front page of that. You have the reference number, and your unique reference number for your SAQs is there, and that's a reference number of the contract. And then in that, what I quite like here, and apologies if anyone's colorblind, it tells you where you've done well, where you've passed, and where you've not achieved. And here, on this particular example, it's the same 179. You can see that device management is where it wasn't compliant, and it tells you here and it tells you there. So you get different things to tell you the same information, which is useful, I think. And that's pretty much the end of most of it. What I'm going to do is show you how to get help from the tool, because that's another challenge. So there are different resources out there that you can access: digital development loans, boost scheme. We've got documentation as well on our website for this, but I feel this actual webinar is probably one of the best ways of getting that help, because it's about talking through how it works in person. But the help desk is the other thing that we do have. The developers NQC who run this for us do have a help desk, but it's not easy to get to. And I have to highlight it because it's like they've hidden it away somewhere, which I think a lot of companies do. So to go to the help desk, you click on help. then go to contact us. But just before I do, you do have a range of common questions and answers here. There's the most popular public sector buyers, registration, sign-in and troubleshooting. Registration is the biggest issue we have, and suppliers. So there are themes. It's worth checking them to see if the answers are in there. But often I find it's not. Even though we have worked out these are the best answers we can give, I think often it's just there's an issue that needs to be dealt with by a person. So click contact us, and then you'll see all these different answers, and then you click on none of these questions help, raise a new ticket. You give your details here, and then send that away, and then you get an answer from the help desk. You should get a my ticket as well, so you'll get a way to get help through that. And that's me finished, really. And I'm going to stop sharing so I can actually see everyone.